Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Tapping the Power of Online PD. My name is Michelle Davis, and I'm Senior Writer at Education Week Digital Directions, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. Social networking is quickly becoming an important tool for professional development for educators. In the past, educators sometimes felt isolated in their classrooms or within their subjects, with few peers to turn to for advice on curriculum, new methods, how to best engage students, and where to find new resources. Now, through online social networking, educators can access a whole world of experts and fellow educators who often provide targeted advice anytime and with immediacy. This type of professional development is also spawning new connections between educators and deeper discussions that can continue online or in a face-to-face setting. Though some educators raise concerns about their ability to navigate this emerging world of professional development through social networking, proponents say sites like Twitter, Ning, and Facebook are opening up a brand new avenue for educators to hone their craft. And a new form of in-person professional development called EdCamps is being organized and inspired by discussions that take place online. Today we have two guests who can walk us through this online world of PD and help us understand how it can aid educators the most. Both of our guests have a significant amount of experience with social networking for professional development. First, we'll hear from Kyle Pace, an instructional technology specialist in the Lee's Summit School District in Lee's Summit, Missouri, who's also an organizer of EdCamp Kansas City. And we'll hear from Shelley Terrell, a teacher trainer and author of the ebook, The 30 Goals for Educators. Shelley writes the Teacher Reboot Camp blog and has been an elementary school teacher. We'd also like to thank our webinar sponsor for today, Global Scholar. After the presentations from our guests, we'll get to questions from all of you in the audience. So now is a good time to review some of the technical aspects of today's presentation. We want this webinar to be a very interactive experience, so please don't be shy about asking questions at any time. Also, if you'd like to view the slides in today's presentation at full size, simply click the Enlarge Slides link on the viewing console. Please check the audio setting on your computer as well as your speaker volume settings if you're having any audio difficulties. If you're having any other difficulties, try clicking the Help button for support. Finally, an on-demand archive of today's presentation will be available online in the next 24 hours. Both the archive and a free-to-download version of the PowerPoint slides will be accessible through edweek.org. Now I'd like to hand over the presentation to Kyle Pace. Kyle, we want to hear from you about this growing trend of social networking in professional development.
Well, thanks so much, Michelle, for that great introduction, and I am very honored to be here today sharing about online professional development and the world that it opens up to educators now all over the world as well. And I'm also very happy to be here presenting with Shelley as well today. So just want to share with you guys just a little bit, just kind of some thoughts I have about online professional development, and then just share a few of my favorite ways to get professional development online, and I'm sure you have your own as well, and I'd be glad to answer any questions you have about tools for online professional development. So where everybody needs help at times with their teaching practices, we should always be looking to get better at what we do to make the best learning experiences as possible for our students. However, face-to-face professional development just isn't always the just-in-time answer that we need. And so many of these online tools now are offering that. They're getting us exactly what we need to become better at what we do in a very timely and efficient manner. And as Michelle kind of said earlier at the beginning of the webinar, no one has to feel isolated anymore with their professional development, with all of the online tools that are available to us. It's not a feeling we have to endure as long as maybe we used to, whether it be yourself in your classroom or a feeling of isolation as a school or a feeling of isolation as an entire district. There are many great ways to get connected and bring other voices into our professional development. And so now we have, just with the press of a few keys on our keyboard, and a few clicks of our mouse, we literally can tap into the world's knowledge. It's always on. It's always available. We can connect with peers that teach the same subject as we do. We can connect with experts in our subject, or another teacher that has even become an expert in a particular subject. We can connect, and it's always available like never before. And the really great thing, I think, about it all is that it's almost always free. This is free to us. It's available all the time. We have the world. We can connect to it to grow. We can teach then our students how to connect and tap into these resources to enrich their learning experience that they have at school. And, of course, we can learn all these other folks that we have the ability to learn with now. It can happen anywhere. It can happen anytime we want to. And I guess my big question would be, do enough of our schools and enough of our school districts recognize this as viable professional development? My opinion, I don't think they do. And I think we need to be recognizing this more and more as a viable option for professional development for our teachers. And, of course, as you know, there is no shortage of ways that we can connect ourselves professionally. This image from Dr. Alec Couros, who's a professor in Canada, I really like this because it shows all of the options that we have available to us. But my first tip of advice, probably my biggest tip when you enter the world of online PD, especially when you're directing that PD for yourself, is don't try to do too many of these at once. Pick one or two that work best for you, and that's really the beauty of that, is that you have all these opportunities to learn, but remember, it's your professional development. Use what you need to get the most out of it. So, the tools that I use aren't going to necessarily be the same tools that Shelley needs or uses to grow professionally. Because a lot of times what happens is, if you try to do too many of those tools at once, you feel like you're taking a drink out of one of these. It kind of feels like taking a drink out of a fire hose. You can quickly become overwhelmed, and you really have a hard time processing it all. So be really selective in the tools that you want. Spend time learning about it, each one, and really decide which one's going to be best for you, because this feeling of overwhelmed, like it's too much information, you don't want that. That's you're not going to learn it when you have that feeling. And then, of course, with all of these online professional development opportunities that we now have, whether it be Twitter or whether it be Ning's or Facebook or Google+, doesn't matter which one of those you pick, there's going to have to be an investment of time up front on your part to get the most benefit out of this. To learn and be better at anything, no matter the medium, we always, of course, have to give it time. There's no quick method to this. It's, and when you start with this, I always hear a lot of folks say to me, well, I just like to lurk. I just kind of like just to hang back in the back, and I like to lurk. Oh, I'm on Twitter, but I never say anything. I just lurk. And that works fine for a while, but like I said, I want you to get exactly what you and your students need out of your online professional development. So that interaction component, that conversation component, making it really a two-way street for you to get exactly what you need is going to be really important. And then so many of these tools are, that's the other thing. You can customize it 100% to get exactly what you need out of it. So, and I can't think of a lot of other professional development opportunities that can give teachers such prescribed learning as so many of these online tools can do. And just here, I posted the question out on Twitter. How has online professional development changed your practices for the better? And you can see some of those responses there. I get on-demand PD, and I can collaborate with other educators. I've learned so much that has made me a better teacher. I'm connected to countless passionate educators willing to share ideas and insights. And again, that was from a new teacher, and they noted so helpful as I get started in the profession. I always think back to if I would have had these resources when I started teaching 12 years ago, and how much more of a better teacher I know I would have been, because I have so much information and so many great people to learn from, literally right here as I sit at my computer anytime I want it. I didn't have that in college, other than the people that I went to college with and my professors. So it just opened so many new lines of communication and learning for me, and I know it does that for a lot of other folks as well. So I just want to share a few of my favorite ways to learn with you all. I'm sure, like I said, I know Shelley's going to share some of those as well, and I know you all probably have your own as well. But the first one would be blogs. I love to read blog posts, whether it be from other teachers or whether it be from administrators or other instructional technology specialists such as myself. I love getting all of the different viewpoints on some of the, the topics can be the same, but it's great to get so many different viewpoints. And a lot of times in blog posts also, when you follow those blogs, the comments that can happen with a blog post can be just as enriching as the post itself. So definitely following blogs, and the way I like to follow blogs is using Google Reader. Google Reader, you can subscribe to RSS feeds. Every blog has an RSS feed. Almost every news source now, like, for example, USA Today's education section has an RSS feed that you can subscribe to in Google Reader. So Google Reader is a great way to manage the sources of information that you like to read the most, and plus it just eliminates all of the other stuff that you can, sometimes advertisements and things that tend to bombard us around a blog post when we read those sometimes. So Google Reader is a great way to manage all of those sources of blogs that you like to read. Another great source relates to Twitter, and that's the hashtag. If you don't know what a hashtag is, that's a keyword on Twitter, and you'll see it's always preceded by the pound sign. So you see several hashtags there, and those are some of the more predominant ones. Sometimes a particular conference has a hashtag, just like EdCamp Kansas City that's coming up here shortly. Our hashtag is EdCampKC, or one of the most popular ones is EdChat that you see there in the top left corner. Some really, really excellent conversations are happening on Twitter around these hashtags. And anyone can create a hashtag. These just happen to be some of the more well-established ones that I thought of. But CP Chat for administrators. CP stands for Connected Principals. NT Chats. NT stands for New Teachers. There's a whole conversation that happens on Twitter just for new teachers. SS Chat for social studies teachers. The list can go on and on and on. This is just a small sampling of the hashtags that are available to follow on Twitter, and you can really get a lot out of those in a very short amount of time. The other cool thing is that you don't even have to have a Twitter account. You may be saying, well, I'm not on Twitter. You don't even have to have a Twitter account to follow these hashtags. You can go to search.twitter.com. You can put in one of those hashtags. You don't have to type it, by the way, with the pound sign when you type it into there. And you can search on any of those hashtags and just see some of the ideas and the resources and the information that are being shared around those hashtags. So that's a great way also. And then, of course, I'll finish my portion with, as Michelle mentioned, what's called the Unconference, which is an in-person professional development initiative that's really starting to sweep the country in just about the last year. And it's called EdCamp. The folks in Philadelphia, there's a great team of folks there. The very first one in May 2010 was EdCamp Philly. And you can see there that map is showing you all of the EdCamps that have happened just in the last year or so, year and a half maybe. that have happened all around North America. So you can see those are really starting to crop up. And it's called an unconference because it's unlike any type of professional development. It is the opposite of formal professional development. Everything is 100% driven by the attendees that come. You don't know the sessions ahead of time. Everyone arrives in the morning, fills up the session board. Anyone that wants to present a session or lead a conversation around a particular topic, everyone signs up. The session board gets filled out. Then everyone's got the schedule for the day, and you can go to exactly which sessions you want to go to, and you can certainly vote with your feet in those sessions as well. If you're in a session and you're not getting out of it what you need to get out of it, it is absolutely okay to move to another session. That's the other great thing about it. There's a lot less formality than the traditional professional development and the traditional conferences that I'm sure so many of us have attended in the past. So you can go to edcamp.wikispaces.com. That's the overall EdCamp site, and you can see there next to the map it outlines the ones that are coming up. So I think we've got 3 or 4 alone coming up, happening around the country on the same day as EdCamp KC. So really looking forward to that. It's a really, really great time of learning and networking with like-minded teachers. And like Michelle said as well, you know, it all started online. EdCamp KC, it started from conversation on Twitter. I know then, you know, there's a couple folks from Omaha that came to EdCamp KC last year, and they decided to start, you know, after they came to Kansas City, they just said, hey, let's do EdCamp Omaha. And later that spring, EdCamp Omaha happened, and it all came through social networking is where all of these EdCamp ideas and where these EdCamps are brainstormed and put together. So I'd really encourage you to go to an EdCamp. If you have one coming up in your area, I know you'll really enjoy it. And again, like I said, you know, the title of the theme of my section is We're Better Together. And I always tell teachers when I'm working with them face-to-face to please share like crazy. Share the awesome things that are happening in your school, in your classroom, in your district. That's how we're going to grow and get better. We are better together, and we have to share the great things that are going on, and social media and social networking make those possible like never before.
Kyle, thank you so much. You touched on so many really excellent ways of seeking out online professional development through social networking, and in the question and answer portion, we'll definitely get more in depth with some of these and talk about them a little bit more. Now, before we move on, we want to hear a few words from our sponsor, Global Scholar.
Global Scholar is comprised of the education solution offerings of Scantron, Global Scholar, and Spectrum K-12. Solutions from Global Scholar empower educators, parents, and students throughout the entire learning lifecycle, helping schools achieve educational excellence. The brand's offerings provide educators with data and insights that work to advance teacher effectiveness and student performance.
Thanks. Now we will turn to Shelley Terrell for her thoughts on how social networking can be useful to educators. Shelley?
Hello. First of all, I'd like to say that I'm greatly honored to be presenting with Kyle, who I've had the opportunity to collaborate online and offline in some great projects that I'll let you know about today, and also to EdWeek for providing this wonderful opportunity for everyone here to learn about something that's potentially life-changing for you and something I'm very passionate about, which is online professional development. But the question I'd like to answer today in my presentation for you is, why do educators connect online? Well, let's get an idea of how many educators connect online. And the real statistic that I found was actually from LinkedIn. And according to LinkedIn, there are nearly 1 million educators using social media for online professional development and networking. But before we get into that, I want to give you a little bit of the background history of why educators connect. And before we talk about the why, how, and where, I want to tell you a little about my teaching journey and the history and roots of online professional development. See, online professional development has literally transformed my life in the last 2.5 years, so much that I left teaching in May. I was teaching English language learners in Germany to train teachers worldwide in personal, passionate learning networks, and I'll explain what that is later. But one of the teachers I met was this one, and I got to take this great picture of him in Newcastle, and this is Simon Finch. And in his blog, he wrote, "A great teacher said to me, the purpose of education is change, so I would change the world." And I want to ask you today, how many of you got into education or decided to become teachers because you believed you could make a positive change or difference in a child's life? Well, I think the majority of you do, because I think education is one of those things you have to have a big heart for, because you definitely don't get into this position because of the hours, because you definitely don't work just from 8 to 5, and you definitely don't get in because parents love you or students adore you or it's the most unstressful job in the world. So when I came into the classroom, I had this idealism, and this was the first class I actually had. It was 100 students, and it was in 1992, and that's an important date. I'll tell you why later. But all of these students were in one class. I was teaching in inner city school, and at the time, my city had the second largest percentage of teenage pregnancy in the U.S. And so many of these kids, their parents were gang members. They were teenagers still, and they had a lot of different types of problems that came with that. I remember the first day I was in the classroom that one of the little girls who her mom had been addicted to drugs, well, it carried on in the bloodstream, and so she literally did cartwheels around me, and many of the kids were running around, and this is the way I felt. And many times I know this is what you feel like in your teaching careers, where you have this cry for help. And so throughout my teaching years, I've noticed that this is something that's really prevalent, no matter how much training that I get. And other teachers as well, they constantly want that help and that support. Unfortunately, in our schools and education policy doesn't support this. So how do we help each other? Well, through social media. And usually I would show a video about this time, but because we don't have the means for that right now or the time, you can always go to the resources at the end and you'll be able to see that video. So let me tell you a little about the history about it. Connecting before 1993. Well, why is 1993 such an important date? It was in 1993, April 30th of 1993, that CERN, which is the European Network for Nuclear Research, decided to provide the World Wide Web for free to everyone in the world. So it wasn't when it was invented. But if you think about before 1993, how we developed professionally, conferences were really necessary because we needed that face-to-face, books, or we had in-house training. Now, think about how difficult that is. Imagine you're a new teacher. You have a student that has ADHD. You don't know that much about it. You ask a teacher, and they say, oh, well, your student might have ADHD. I remember I had to go to the library. I might have to check out a book because they wouldn't have the book on hand, and it would be 6 weeks later till I had the answers that maybe could help me in my project. So that's one of the things that I think about with professional development. So there's a very practical reason why nearly 1 million educators are seeking help online. And this is what it kind of looks like. So before 1993, that's what it looked like. And then after 1993, Kyle shared with you so many different resources. But here are many, many more. And this is just a little bit of an amount of resources for online professional development. And actually, there are many, many, many more out there. So these are called the places where you decide to learn. You choose to go to Facebook or to Twitter or to Wikis or Google+, and you choose to learn from other teachers there. That's the great thing, is you have these choices. And these are called PLEs, or personal learning environments. Now, an important question that might come up is, how do you begin to share and connect online? Well, there are many different ways, but I like to think of the 4 C's. And these slides are showing up a little slow for me, so that's why I'm kind of pausing. But the 4 C's are to connect, to communicate, collaborate, and create. And it's a bit of a process. The connection is the first time you decide. For example, many of you will probably be on Facebook, and I'll show you different places where teachers reside on Facebook. But the first step is for you to reach out and say, hello, I really enjoyed your resource. I would like to connect with you, or I would like to be your friend. The same thing on Twitter, to tweet with an @ and say to either Kyle Pace or @Shelley Terrell, because these are our Twitter names, I really enjoyed this resource you shared, or I need help in this area. Can you please help me? And this is the first step you have to make, is to just get out of your comfort zone and make that connection. And then you can begin communicating back and forth, having conversation, collaborating on world projects or different types of projects, and then finally creating your own content and uploading. So these are some of my favorite places online. This is EdChat, and this is something that Kyle and I work with other educators. It's the largest education hashtag that there is, that has sparked over 400 other education hashtag conversations out there. So every week, every Tuesday, we get together, and thousands of teachers, over 2,000 teachers, every Tuesday gather worldwide to discuss the topic. They vote on the topic, and it could be things like homework or grading and different things like that, integrating technology. They vote on the topics. And I'm really proud of this project because this was one of the first of its kind, and it's something that I co-founded with Tom Whitby and Stephen Anderson, and it's made such an impact that we actually were mentioned in the New York Times, so I was very excited about that. But there are also places aside from Twitter. So Facebook, one of the advantages is that many people are already on Facebook, so it's something you don't have to register for. There are a lot of teachers who have private groups, and groups are different than pages, and there are pages. So you can go to EdChat, and you can find many teachers there to connect with, and you can join the page, and you can post your blog resources or different types of comments and join discussions. And then from there, you can find private groups. There are things called Nings, or these are online communities. They're not free if you created, but there are free ones that you can join. Here's the edupln.ning.com, which was created by Tom Whitby. And this one is really great because you can have longer discussions than you could on Twitter, because Twitter is only 140 characters. So this is one of the benefits of a Ning. There are nearly 10,000 educators. They break off into groups. There's some for math. There's some for those who love mobile devices. So there's different types of topics and groups that you can join, and you can share videos, and you can share slides, and you don't have to have a blog for this. It's a private community, so you can be assured that many of the things you share aren't going to be pasted all over the Internet. So it might be a first step for you. And then there's Classroom20.com, which is also a Ning, but there are nearly 70,000 educators worldwide on this Ning, and you can attend weekly webinars, and you can actually see interviews and talk and answer questions like you are today with really incredible people like Sir Ken Robinson, Alfie Kohn, Diane Ravitch, Michelle Reese, so many different people that are at the head of education, and this is all for free. And then there are online conferences. This is one of the conferences that I am really proud of, that I'm one of the founders of, which is the reformsymposium.com. Over 4,100 educators from 100 different countries attended the one recently in August. We have another one that's going to be on Martin Luther King weekend that's coming up in January, and we would love to see different types of presenters. So if you feel like you can do a webinar like this, feel free to join us. Our theme this year is Dare to Believe. And Kyle has also helped me with this project as well, so I'm really grateful to Kyle for that. And then there's the 30 Goals for Educators. 30 Goals Challenge is actually the book that I'm authoring, but it first began as a social network for educators. We use different types of social networks to help each other accomplish 30 goals within the year. And so this is within a year, and we'll be doing this again to help each other. We help each other through Facebook and Twitter and so many different types of avenues. We also blog about our experiences. It's just 30 goals. And the great thing about this is that nearly 7,000 educators worldwide have joined together to support each other, and it's just a very touching, wonderful community. So what do I share? Well, that's a very good question. This is what I suggest, stories. People want to hear what your real experiences are in the classrooms, especially when the failures that you've learned from, or the successes that you have, or the kid that everybody thought was unreachable that you reach. That's what really touches the educator community. They want to see your resources. We spend so much time as educators creating resources, lesson plans, curriculums, developing rubrics. You might as well publish that online, because many times at conferences we may only have 4 people that come to the presentations, but if we do it online or we publish our slides online, then we can share it with a wide range of teachers who will really, really appreciate it, and we get more feedback about this. But most importantly, the thing to share is your passion. Each of you is passionate about something, whether it be science or math, and you're really great with it, so share that. And the great thing about all of this is that it's very personalized. You get to decide what you want to learn, who you want to learn from, what is the best tool. Is it Twitter? Is it Ning? Is it online communities? Is it Facebook? How much time you invest? And how you want. Do you want to learn through webinars? Do you want to learn through conferences, through Twitters, hashtags? So many decisions you get to make. It's very personalized. And lastly, how do you find the time? Well, this is what has helped me. You can use a browser like TweetDeck. It's free. You download it to the computer, and you can even post on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, all in one go. So that's what I would recommend. It's really easy to see things. But my favorite thing is to connect with my mobile device. There are many free apps that will help you with these social networks. And the great thing about it is that while we spend so much time waiting in line or traveling through public transportation or on the bus, and so when I'm standing online, that's when I connect with a lot of educators online, and it makes me feel good. It takes away the stress of having to just concentrate on waiting in line for whatever I'm waiting for. So I think it's a really, really motivational. And I'd like to leave you with this thought. In an EdChat, Ruth Cohenson, a teacher, and I love to quote teachers because they really, really inspire me, said the power we have through networking is humbling, frightening, and exciting. Use it well. At the end of the day, we're connecting with other human beings, others in our profession who are just so passionate about what they do, and they must be passionate because they take the time and the opportunity, just like you did today, to attend something that you're not getting paid for, but something that you believe in, that you came to see today because you believe in your craft and you believe in bettering the lives of the children that you teach. All the resources from this presentation you can find at tinyurl.com, Shelley Terrell, including videos, including tutorials, including people you should follow, and things like that. And if you have any questions along the journey, you can always reach me at shelleyterrell@gmail.com. Thank you so much.
Shelley, thanks so much. I think one of the great things that both you and Kyle did is provide some ways of managing some of these blogs and chats and all of these things, because I think especially for someone who hasn't ventured into that realm yet, it can be really overwhelming until you kind of get your footing there. And now we're going to move on to some questions. We have some great questions rolling in, so keep them coming. I want to start with a question that I think relates to what I just said, is how do you increase participation in online communities from teachers who have little free time and are often technologically impaired or averse to using technology? Kyle, why don't you talk a little bit about the whole issue of, and Shelley just mentioned this, about educators having to spend their free time doing this when they're already very busy. And then, Shelley, I'll ask you about how to get some teachers who might be a little bit nervous about the technology involved. Kyle, why don't you start?
Okay. Gosh, it really is a baby step process. Like I said earlier, you have to pick the one that's just right for you. You can't, don't feel like you have to do everything under the sun all up front. I increase participation. When I'm working with a group of teachers face to face, how I've got them interested in in an online component like Twitter, for example, or for a Ning, is just providing them with those real life examples, just like kind of Shelley mentioned earlier as well. I always share with teachers the example. I know a teacher one time, he was teaching a lesson. It was a secondary teacher, so he was teaching a lesson on something with the Civil War during, let's just say it was second hour, and then he something about that lesson, I don't remember the details, but something about that lesson didn't go right. So he went out to Twitter real quick at the end of that period, or it was during passing time, and he already knew about the hashtag SSChat, which is for a chat specifically for social studies teachers. And he was still pretty new to Twitter. He hadn't necessarily built up a big network on Twitter yet, but by putting that hashtag on it, SSChat, that put it in front of a lot of other folks, hundreds and hundreds of other folks, other social studies teachers that also follow that hashtag. So literally within minutes, he had responses on how to, just small ways he could make that lesson better. And he shared that literally during a passing period, he was able to learn something new to make the lesson better for later in that day. So just examples like that, when it didn't, that was during a passing period. It didn't take a lot of time. So really, I like showing examples like that show teachers, hey, just knowing a couple of things, you don't have to be real involved in it, but just a couple little tricks like that can quickly get you information you need without feeling like you have to know all this technical side of it.
Well, let me follow up with this question with Shelley. I mean, is it really fair to ask teachers who, really work hard, most of them, and are often overworked, to do some of this stuff on their own time? Is it kind of fair to ask them to do that?
I think, maybe the asking isn't quite so fair, but it's one of those things in every job and every profession. I used to be into business, and that was actually my background before I did my master's in education, and one of the things they always told you was to read trade journals, to be reading constantly the materials and attending and just doing different things like that, because you, in the business world, you always want to be ahead of the game. That's how you're on the top and how you keep with your field. And I personally believe that if you're passionate about something, that you take the time to constantly learn. And it's one of those things, I think, that if we want to send a message to our learners that they need to be lifelong learners and explore things that they're interested in, then that's one of the things that we do, is that we model that for them. So I think it's not fair to ask. It's not fair to specifically say. I think with some kind of training that they have, especially in-house training, where they don't even ask teachers what kind of training they want or who they want to learn from. They just kind of throw them in and say, you're required to be here from this time to this time. At least with online professional development, the teacher has the choice. They get to choose, and they get to choose the format. And sometimes it can be something where they multitask. They can listen to podcasts or a webinar while they're doing something like cleaning. So I think it offers more opportunities.
That's great. I think if you're cleaning and listening to a webinar, it might go a little bit faster. So say, teachers buy into this and they're really excited about it, and they're spending a lot of time getting a lot of great resources and feedback and improving their practice. Kyle, you kind of touched on this also. How do you convince administrators, school boards, school leaders that this is a valuable way of getting professional development and that it's meaningful?
It all goes back to what I said about sharing. We have to be sharing with the right stakeholders. We have to be, and just like Facebook is a perfect example of that. Administrators now can reach parents and school board members and the community about all the great things that are happening through a Facebook page. We know all our parents are there on Facebook, and probably many of them are on Twitter also. So let's use that medium for the betterment of ourselves professionally. Let's use it for the betterment of our school and certainly for the betterment of what we can offer our students. I think, you know, and like I said, I tell teachers to share like crazy. Just, you know, almost to the point of when you think I am giving you, get to the point where you're almost giving, you feel like you're giving too much information. Don't be afraid to share, especially with your administrator, that, hey, this is what we, you know, we did this awesome project today on such and such. Doesn't matter if it was a technology project necessarily, you know, but where the idea for that project came from, it may have come from this online professional development. So you need to make sure your administrators, your school board members, your parents know, hey, this is what I use to get this great idea.
That's great. And Shelley, I know you, I think we discussed this during a story that I wrote in which I interviewed you. I think you talked a little bit about administrators or school districts being willing to give credit for some conferences, or some kind of unconferences or online conferences. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yes. A lot of times many of these events don't usually come with something that you can print out that you can present to your administrator. But for the Reform Symposium, that's something we did, that we created a CPD, Continuing Professional Development form, where it followed the rules basically for reflection and things like that would for many states, and it's hard when you do something uniform, but that way they could present it to their administrators, the educators, and then get the online the continuing education credit for it. But a lot of times we can do that ourselves. You know, we can attend a webinar and we can say, hey, I would like to get an attendance certificate, or email the administrator, and a lot of times they'll send them a certificate or whatever they need. I think we just need to go ahead of time, and we just need to be able to present this to the administrator and say, look, I'm learning from Diane Ravitch today, or I'm taking a webinar with Ed Week, you know, this is real professional development. I mean, how can you say that, you know, something learning from Alfie Kohn or Sir Ken Robinson is not, you know, a quality professional development? I think a lot of times we just are afraid to ask, and so a lot of times we don't get the credit because we don't ask, and so those are ways that teachers can. But I would like to also say, I think Kyle's really right about the process. It takes baby steps. It took me 3 years to convince my administrator to implement ICTs in Germany. And then he was so excited about Skype, he had the whole city get together to implement Skype, and all of this great things came out of it. But one of the things that we do have that Kyle also talked about in his presentation is that we do have an administrator group, and a lot of them will tell very powerful stories of how they were dead set against social media and information and communication technologies in their schools, and how they made the shift, and they're very supportive. And so if you have an administrator, we can introduce them to this group by George Kiros, and there's Eric Schenniger, and a lot of the principals there that will help support the administrator or the school board or the superintendent into how they could implement this in their schools.
That's great. Now, you both are very passionate about Twitter and talked a lot about how helpful it can be. And we have a great question I think a lot of people ask when they think about professional development in Twitter is, you know, Twitter, you can only write a few short characters. Can you really get into complex issues in that sort of medium? Kyle, why don't you address that one?
Yeah, that is definitely a great question, and there you do have to get very creative with those 140 characters sometimes when you're trying to get your point across. But I like that, because when I'm composing a tweet to send out, and I really have to be thoughtful about exactly what it is I'm trying to say. Now, am I always able to get out everything? Of course not. And, you know, for an example like EdChat that Shelley talked about, you know, when we have EdChat on Tuesdays, one of the things I always encourage, and I know the other moderators, and I know Tom and Shelley and Steve all encourage this also, is to EdChat, the conversation certainly cannot be limited to those 140 characters. It has to go beyond that hour that EdChat happens. It has to go beyond Twitter. If we want to see real change happening in our schools and in our classrooms, we have to take it beyond that. That may be writing a blog post about to extend the conversation. That may be posting something in the educator's PLN, starting a discussion there. That may be taking it to Facebook or Google+. Whatever other medium you want to take where you don't take it to, that you don't have that character limit, I think the important thing is you just take it somewhere. And and sometimes too, that may mean taking it offline. You may have got enough from Twitter, and now you're ready to take it offline and do what needs to be done, get an action plan in place to put that into, make that a reality at your school or in your district. So I don't think it matters. There certainly are limits, but it's where you take it. It's where you take it from there when, especially then putting it into action is where you're going to see real change happen. And Shelley, jump in if you've got something else on that.
Okay. I think you covered it pretty well. I think, yes, it's definitely, I see Twitter as more like you plant little seeds, and then the educator will react to those seeds. And it's so easy to do because it's sort of like text messaging. And we're familiar with text messaging, but to many, many, many educators. And so when they respond back to us, it's like a text message, and it's just like a little nugget. But then we choose where to carry that nugget. And I know for me, a lot of times I see things on Twitter, and I get really excited, or I get really angry, or I get really, emotional about it, and I want to go explore more, and I take it, like Kyle said, outside, and I'll either put it in a blog post, or I'll talk to other teachers about it, or I'll implement a project. I mean, we've had schools come out of Twitter. We've had EdChat. We've had webinars, conferences. So I think what Kyle already said, to carry it outside and see where it goes from there.
That's great. One thing that in terms of online learning in all aspects, there's always a lot of focus on what kind of scientific research is there to prove that this is helpful. Are there any studies or any kind of sort of scientific research that shows that online professional development results in better student outcomes? Is there anything that says this really works other than anecdotal kind of examples? Either one of you can chime in on that one.
I don't know if I can remember exact statistics, but what comes to mind is Will Richardson has a great book out on personal learning networks, and I mean it's just got really, really great information in there, just example after example. It's a solution tree book, and I know he's done, he's always updating it. I think his newest edition of that book just came out, and I know he's done a lot of extensive study around the impact that personal learning networks can have, that's the broad term that a lot of people use is PLN, or personal or professional learning network. Shelley, you jump in if you've got something? I can't think of anything else right off the top of my head.
Well, one thing for sure is that this connecting online is actually grounded in theory. It's by George Siemens and Stephen Downes, who are the theorists behind it. So just connecting with them, and if they go to the tinyurl.com, Shelley Terrell, they'll see archives, and they'll see a We Connect wiki, and it'll talk all about the theory behind it. So, and they've done a lot of research as well. So that's a lot of great research there. But Will Richardson is great for that too. EdChat itself has about 10 research projects that are ongoing right now, and some have been published already, where there were PhD students who went and they observed the culture, and so they have a lot of findings as well. And if more resources are needed, like specific types of links, I'm sure you can email me or Kyle, and we'll get those out to you, because there is a lot of research out there about case studies and field studies and that do show that it does result in improved student outcomes.
That's great. I think when it comes to sort of this type of online learning and these types of issues, there's always this push and pull between, scientific proof that it works and sort of the newness of it and not having time to do those scientific studies. And so I think there's always this push and pull when it comes to education and technology. The next question I wanted to ask is an interesting one. Does it really count as professional development if teachers are just sort of comparing and sharing in a social network, just like what might go on in a faculty lounge? Is that really professional development, even if it's useful? Kyle, why don't you tackle that one?
I think it is. If you're getting something out of it professionally, if your practice is improving because of it, and if you're if student outcomes are improving because of it, it absolutely should be counted as professional development. I don't think we do that enough. Just kind of like, like Shelley was talking about earlier, just asking if this can count towards my professional development, or certainly, I work with teachers all the time that are making technology one of their, professional development goals for the school year, and that could certainly fall into that. I mean, this is a new means of learning. I mean, when you think about the total number of teachers that are in the country compared to the amount of teachers that are, we have that are using social networking for professional development, we still have a big gap there. There's not, we don't have every teacher connected online doing their professional development online, but just like we have districts that are moving learning online for students. We have, in my district, we have some classes that are 100% online. Students are learning online, so why shouldn't, why wouldn't teachers be given the same opportunity for their learning? If we're going to move in that direction, we should move in that direction at all levels, not just for students. I think teachers should get that opportunity as well, and for it to count as viable professional development. And of course, there's lots of ways. Teachers can demonstrate their successes. Again, back to that sharing piece, and whether it be a teacher that maintains a blog, or a teacher that's or a teacher is, teaching teachers the skills of curating all of these great resources online and putting that into kind of like a portfolio using a site like Digo or something, where they can curate all of these great resources and organize them, and which makes them then easily, back to that sharing piece, easily shareable with others. So, it's teaching teachers certainly how to curate all of these great things that they find out they get from all of this online professional development. That's important, and it most definitely it should be it should be considered viable PD.
Great. I want to ask both of you. Someone posted a great, not a question, but a great example of a teacher using technology, a kindergarten teacher using Twitter to tweet to parents every day saying what they did in class, which gives parents the opportunity to talk to their kids about what they did that day, and then they can also keep up with the different activities going on in class. Shelley, maybe you can cite an example for me of how you think online social networking really had an impact, or just an interesting example of where you think it worked really well, either a teacher that you've worked with or something you've experienced.
One of the ones that comes to mind, because I work with a lot of global collaboration projects, and so there was a teacher in Argentina, and her name is Greta, and she has fifth graders, and she just began to blog with them, and then she had an open blog. She didn't require it. She didn't even have them graded. But one of the things that came out of this was they were just free to blog when they wanted, but they were so excited. They had over, I think, 50 countries comment on their blogs, and it was very, very safe to do and things. But one of the things she said was that the shyest kid in the class would not speak, and this is language learning and learning English, and wouldn't really come out of his shell, and he would be very shy to do things, and he wasn't doing very well. And even some of the teachers had said, this child, you better watch out. This is this child is not going to do well in your class and stuff. It's really hard to teach this child. And this child really excelled and posted a lot on the blog, and it was a constant kind of where the child, this kid found his voice. And before, he was just too shy. And there are so many stories of how very troubled or kids that are shy or who can't really express themselves, because a lot of times the dynamic in the classroom is the teacher speaks and the student absorbs it. They don't get a chance to have their voice, where it really just helped that child a lot.
That's great. Kyle, do you have an example you want to share with us?
Well, just to kind of, I thought of what I thought of that kind of goes along with what Shelley said in getting students blogging, and it led me to think of another popular hashtag on Twitter, that if you are interested in getting your students blogging and helping your students to understand the power and the reach of their blogging, there's a hashtag called comments, the number 4 and kids, comments for kids. And I see that posted all the time on Twitter, because a teacher that has their students blogging will say, post where, hey, my students are blogging about their learning around such and such topic. Please leave them some comments, and they'll put the comments for kids hashtag on their tweet. So that's a great way also just to show kids that when they're sharing their work online and publishing their work online, the reach that their work can have, because they might get comments. My 5th graders here in Missouri, could swap comments back and forth with Greta's 5th graders in Argentina. And so it's a great way to get kids communicating with other kids, and again, that learning from each other and sharing piece as well. So that was the first thing that I had thought about.
Let me also ask both of you this question. We'll start with Shelley. What should you do? A lot of these things like YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, a lot of these things are blocked at some people's schools. How can you go about educating administrators that these are valuable tools and that you should have access to them if you're a teacher?
I think it goes back to what Kyle was saying about sharing. And one of the things that really helped me with my administrator in Germany was to show very powerful examples. So I have noticed, even with teachers who are very shy with using technology, if I show what the students learn and how excited they are, the videos that you can show or the student work, and it doesn't necessarily have to be your own. There's so many examples. There's so many published student work out there with these kind of materials and videos, especially Skype. I think Skype is one of the most powerful, greatest examples that's really easy to get unblocked in many schools, because you can see the power and it makes sense right away. So if you even do a search on YouTube for Skype, you'll see Skype classrooms and 2 classrooms and how it looks, and it's just so powerful and exciting. And that's what I showed my administrators, the power of it. There are also things you can do offline, and that's how I started. So some of these things were blocked in my school, so what I did was I uploaded them afterwards, and the kids could go afterwards and they could look, and the parents, of course, I got the parents' permission. And so they were able to see, and I used different things like avatars. I didn't use their faces. I tried everything to work within the parameters, but to get this stuff online, just to show something to my administrator. And then when the parents were excited, and they were, and then I showed my administrator, then they couldn't really argue why against it or why it was blocked, because I had the parent approval. And I think also I give parent workshops at the beginning, and we talk about these issues, and we come to compromises of, what will be shown online, what tools will you use, and it's like a workshop for parents. And I always entice them by making like homemade Mexican dishes and things like that, so that way they will come.
Great. Shelley, thanks so much. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have left for questions today. But for those of you who'd like to learn more about this topic, make sure to check out our new special section on online learning and professional development, currently available on educationweek.org or digitaldirections.org. We're going to hear a word now from our sponsor, Global Scholar.
Global Scholar solutions are designed to work in harmony to orchestrate a complete cycle of learning. What begins as driving a unified and properly mapped educational curriculum passes through robust online and offline assessments, powerful data-driven teacher decision support, and a unique platform of enabled differentiated instruction. From there, the system goes on to engage a larger community of administrators, parents, and other student life coaches. Global Scholar serves 80 of the largest 100 school districts in the United States, as well as 70 countries and 15 ministries of education throughout the world. It partners with some of the most progressive and innovative school systems in America, including recipients of funding from the Race to the Top initiative and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
Thank you. I want to give a big thanks again to our presenters, Kyle and Shelley. And as I mentioned earlier, an archive of today's discussion and the PowerPoint slides will be available at www.edweek.org within 24 hours. Thanks to all of you out there for your attention and participation. I hope you join us again soon for another Education Week webinar. Goodbye.